Welcome to the Team Engagement Podcast, where leaders of teams share their insights. It's 6 questions in less than 9 minutes because leaders know how to be concise. Let's go ahead and jump right into it today. The first question, in a few sentences, tell us who you are and what you do.
Well, who I am, I'm Jesus Eduardo Campa. Everybody calls me Eddie, so that's why it's Jesus Eddie Campa. I'm the man with three names, and that's a whole different story we don't have time to get into. That was related to my time as the chief of police in Marshall, Texas. Basically, who am I? Well, I'm a son, a father, a husband, and a law enforcement expert with over 27 years of continuing law enforcement experience. Jack of all trades, and I'm trying to master a few, but it's hard to do that.
Well, I love how you describe yourself as father and son as well as many other things, so that's great. Thank you. Question number 2, what's the best thing about working with a team?
Well, I think the best thing about working with a team is being able to, as a leader, your job is to convince people to follow you. And I think that the most important thing of working with a team is being able to get everybody on the same page. There's a big difference between managers and leaders. And I think what sets us apart as leaders is the fact that we have a vision, something that we can see that nobody else can. My forte, one of the things that I've been, I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse, is that I've often been referred to as a visionary. I'm usually brought in as a change agent to the organizations that I've led because I can see the bigger picture. And sometimes trying to bring those teams together is a little hard when you can't get that whole vision. But what's exciting is that when you are able to put everybody and align everybody to see that vision at the end of the day, and they all follow you. And a lot of the times, you just can't do it by yourself. I mean, you can have the vision, but then you need all those people to come in and help you with their expertise.
I love that. Vision alignment. Love that. Thank you for sharing that. Question number 3. I hear from other leaders of teams that it can be a challenge to get team members engaged. Tell me your thoughts.
Well, it can be, and I've experienced it, and again, like I said, it's either a curse or a blessing. When you come in as the change agent, you usually coming into an organization that is already has some issues, and that's why my speaking business and my consulting business is called Leading Through Adversity, because I've had to come in, and every time I lead an agency, I'm leading it during adverse periods time. So I think that the hardest reason to try to get teams engaged is because sometimes they fail to see the vision, the bigger picture of either the city manager, the organization, or the person that's leading it. A lot of the times when I've taken over agencies, I've been given my marching orders. This is the direction we want to go, make it happen. So then you come in and you set this vision, and you meet with the team that's in place. And you usually, there's two things that cops hate the most. One is the way things are, and change. So status quo. So when you try to get them all to follow you and go in one direction, it's hard. And that's part of the hardest part of engaging, is trying to change that culture. Not trying to throw in the race card or anything like that, but a lot of the times, I am a minority, I'm a Hispanic. A lot of the times, sometimes you come in and there's a culture clash in some of the situations that I've had to deal with. Luckily, in the current situation I'm in right now, we're moving forward successfully. And I think that's the biggest problem, is just trying to get the cultures aligned to follow that one big vision. In this example, the vision that the state has. So I think that's the hardest part.
Yeah, really appreciate your perspective of culture and diversity and so forth. So thank you for sharing that. That is great. Absolutely. Question number 4. What other successful team leaders, such as yourself, should be on my podcast?
Well, I've been lucky. A lot of the times people have said to me, it's like, how do you come up with these ideas? How do you come up with these plans? And a lot of the times, the first person I would, and not to turn this into a faith-based program, but the first person I would tell you to interview is, if you can get Jesus Christ out here, do it, because he's probably the greatest leader I've ever had as a mentor and everything. I mean, you talk about leading through adversity. I mean, he hasn't been around for several hundred years, and he's still trying to get over the adversity, Yes. But right now, I'm very blessed to have an individual that I met several years ago who was pretty much in the same situation that I am as a change agent, and his name is Earl Morris, and you can find him on LinkedIn. He's an author. He's a former police chief. He's currently working with me as my compliance manager in the state agency that I work with. My mentor, Mr. Paul Dipp, owner of Economy Cash and Carry Express, multi-million corporation, is another great leader that I think you should talk about. I mean, you talk about a man who came from humble beginnings and has just grown up into and turned his father's small grocery store into this remarkable machine. He's actually the one who's mentored me throughout my life, and I've known him for 22 years. It's been a blessing. So I would love to definitely see you, talk to those individuals. They could share a lot of insight into your work, into the leaders, into the world of a leader.
It sure sounds like it. They sound like great people. Thank you for those recommendations. Question number 5. What other piece of advice would you give to other professionals leading teams?
Well, that's a tough one because, it depends on who you ask. The thing about leadership is that leadership is based on a person's perspective. Okay. You and me are talking right now. I can say, who are your top 5 leaders? And I may disagree with 3 of them. I'll give you my top 5 and you're going to disagree with 3 of them. Everybody in life is a leader. I mean, regardless of how you cut it, they may be the leader in their family, the leader of their business, their organization, the leader of their life. But I think one of the hardest things about leadership is people have to understand that when there's a leader, there's only one leader. I mean, just like the nation, there's one president, heads of state, there's one head of state. And sometimes you can't really lead by committee. That doesn't really work. So that's why you always have to establish one leader who's going to take you in that direction of the vision that has been established. And I think that that's one of the hardest challenges that leaders have, is because a lot of the times, especially in the world we live in today, you have to remember that everybody wants to be part of the team. Everybody wants to be the decision maker. Everybody wants a piece of the pie, or, he didn't ask me. Kind of like in the organization I'm in now, a lot of it was done by committee. And the reason I was brought in was to kind of change that culture, because it has been hard to lead by committee, So I think that that's one of the very biggest difficult things about leading a team or working with a team, is that you have to set very clear standards and guidelines of who's in charge. Now, that doesn't mean that who's in charge means he's the guy that's always right. See, for instance, for me, I by no means consider myself to be the smartest guy in the room, and the day that I do, that means that it's time for me to retire. What makes me, I think, a good leader, and what makes good leaders, is that we always surround ourselves with people who are smarter than us. And when we establish a team that way, who can guide us in making the right decisions by providing us with the facts, and we move forward, then that helps us lead the team. But I think that's one of the hardest parts of leading a team, is that we're always trying to make everybody happy. And as a leader, it's not your job to make people happy. It's your job to move the organization forward. And I think that's one of the hardest things leaders have when they deal with teams.
Great pieces of advice. Thank you. Those are just outstanding ideas. Well, 6th and final question. Tell us about your first job.
Well, my first job, I'm sure like most kids out there, was mowing grass. I wanted to make some money, and I was like, well, I don't have a car. I think I was like 10 years old. So I started mowing lawns. My grandmother, I was raised by my grandmother, so she had other grandmother friends, and they didn't have anybody to mow their grass, so I'd go mow their grass and stuff. And you're talking about 30 somewhat years ago, when getting $5 a pay for a whole day's worth of work of weed eating and mowing grass and raking and throwing trash, and you start at 7 o'clock in the morning. Before you knew it, it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Granted, I was only 10, and I got paid for $5. So at the end of the week, I had $20. I thought I was the richest guy in the world.
I love that. And I share your experience. I also was a lawn boy growing up. So that's great. Well, thank you so much, Eddie. We appreciate you being on the podcast. How can people find you?
Well, you can visit my website, JesusEddieCampa.com. Just, JesusEddiecampa.com, JesusEddieCampa.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn. I do a lot of LinkedIn sharing, and same thing, Jesus Eddie Campa at LinkedIn. Or you can visit my website, my other website, Leading Through Adversity, which has I decided to go ahead and spin off onto a speaking platform, and I'm doing a lot of speaking engagements, which I was really disappointed in because this coronavirus has really killed my momentum. I was on a roll and it kind of died out. So you can find me there. Emails and phone numbers are on my websites, and you can reach me anytime. This is really what it's all about, is helping other leaders succeed.
Well, thank you. I appreciate those comments, and certainly stay safe out there as you continue to serve the public. So thank you so much.
Definitely.
This is Sean Richards with the Team Engagement Podcast, where leaders share their insights. You can find more ideas by finding us on LinkedIn, searching Blue Sky Business Consulting. Have a great day.